So expected points. So in football, some people might be familiar with expected goals. So expected goals is if a player takes a shot in this position, what percentage of shots taken from that position normally end up in the back of the net? It's a percentage likelihood thing based on data that is gathered through a ton, like thousands and thousands of football matches. And I've often wondered, how are we going to start seeing this in rugby? And it's starting to be rolled out now. So the punchline of this is that the point that Sean Holly was making was that according to expected points, Wales should have beaten Scotland by about 12 points in the Wales-Scotland game. We'll talk about the game itself later. So that's how this progresses over time. Now, in football, XG is a very divisive stat. A lot of people hate it. A lot of people think it's just nonsense. It's for the birds. It's like just stats for stats' sake and things. And other people, a lot of nerds in particular, swear by it. And like, no, this is the thing. And XG always comes good in the end and stuff. I'm kind of in the middle. I think the XG has its place, but I don't think it's the be-all and end-all. Now, this is new. Now, rugby doesn't have a kind of equivalent of a shot being taken. It's not that instantaneous for rugby. So that's why these graphs that I'm showing for video watchers are so linear, whereas in football you would normally see it as a jump when each shot is taken. It's a linear graph upwards. So what goes into deciding what the expected points are is things like field position, 22 entries, and what you would normally expect. So if you have a line out on the opposition's 5 meter, there would be a percentage of line outs on 5 meters that lead to tries. And so that will go into the algorithm and they'll work out how likely it was for a try to be scored from that opportunity that Wales may have had. And anyway, so you put all that in and it spits out that Wales should have won by 12 points. I think this is an interesting start to this stat. I don't necessarily think it's fully formed yet, and I think there needs to be a lot more education about how it's arrived at, because obviously Sean Holly got pelters for what he said on Scrum 5 and how it was nonsense, and like people saying anyone who thinks that Wales should have won that game, they need their heads seen to, or whatever it is. It needs a lot of explaining, and maybe that in itself makes it perhaps unsuitable for wider consumption, just the sheer amount of explaining. But rugby generally needs a lot of explaining anyway. Yeah, so I don't know, mate. This isn't your kind of thing, I think it's fair to say. So putting this up on the screen and me telling you all that, and you're fresh to it, what's your instant reaction to seeing this? What's the first thing that pops into your head?
It's another talking point. It just adds a little bit more intrigue, a little bit like a more of a talking point to the weekend's action. It adds to the review of the game. It certainly drives discord. I think it's a good thing, but I think you're right in terms of there definitely been a need to fully explain how these things are reached so that people don't just automatically dismiss them. But for me, they definitely add to it, and this is exactly what other sports do as well. Like as you mentioned, football do this. So this is an important development. But like all things in rugby, like it is a complicated sport, so we need to make this information easy to digest. So I think you're right in terms of, given that perspective and explaining how they get to these
for all of the snootiness that rugby has towards other sports at times, rugby is still very much playing catch up to other sports, especially football, when it comes to integration of stats and visualization of stats. So there's a lot of stats in rugby, but I think only now are we seeing the people who do stats trying to visualize them in an interesting and digestible way.